Hi, I have a new story. Seth was a wild man. He lived his life however he wanted. He had only one rule: don't hurt anyone unless they deserved it. Seth was 6'8" and weighed in at 283 pounds, and most of it was muscle. He kept his red hair long and wore a scruffy beard because he said, shaving is for ladies, wimps, and owned men of society. If he was alive in the time of Vikings, he would have been captain of a troop of pillagers, only if they deserved it. However, he was made in our modern time, and this location in history made life difficult for him. He stood out like a sore thumb, red head and shoulders above most men that treated him as a sideshow. There's power in numbers, is what Seth used to say about this, and they don't deserve it either, would follow that statement. His massive stature was only matched by his heart and his anger when kindled by someone's willful ignorance towards him or the innocent meek. He considered himself innocent, mostly, and also meek. His meekness came from being chastised as different since he was a boy, and his anger from the same as a teen. All of his life he sought peace, and sometimes he created it through violence, if they deserved it. This is why he became a pothead, to soothe his judgment of who deserved what, and to be in the company of those that accepted him because they were high all the time. Seth really didn't like weed, but he liked to be liked. One morning he had a dream, and in this dream he was racing a car through the mountains of Colorado along a river gorge. The hairpin turns had given him a wild smile as the car's tires squealed their protest of the high speed that they endured by the car's tuned engine and Seth's size 13 foot. He raced along the river gorge ever faster up into the mountains, the engine humming along with the protest of the squealing rubber. Seth and the car went around another curve. The passenger side tires left the road onto the gravel shoulder, flinging rocks into the gorge that fell into the sparkling river below them. Woo-hoo! He shouted in concert with the car's symphony. They continued on, going ever faster, winding up the mountain track until the next hairpin turn. The tires once again met the gravel shoulder, but this time it was all four of them, and the car drove into the gorge, leaving the earth behind. Time slowed in this dream, and Seth could see the blue sky, the brightness of the sun, and the white clouds that billowed up into the heavens. The sound of the car disappeared to him as he focused on the sky. The car completely was gone from this dream. However, Seth continued flying up. Eventually, he landed on a cloud that was flat, and its softness cushioned his landing. He giggled as a child when he bounced. He lay on his back on that cloud, staring up at the blue sky that he had never seen before. Then a bright light surrounded him, really bright, so bright that he had to shield his green eyes from it. "Having fun, Seth?" a voice asked him. Seth squinted and looked around, yet he saw no one. The cloud was filled with a bright mist. He did not answer, only waited to hear it again. He felt too shamed to answer. "You have 30 days to live, Seth. No matter what you choose to do with them, you have 30 days. Seth's eyes popped open, and he saw that he was in his bed, safe in his unkempt bedroom. What a trip! Crazy dream! Awesome car, though. Put that on my bucket list." Seth sat up in bed and swung his feet to the floor. He reached over and packed a bong and pulled it in one hit. He coughed it out and forgot half of his dream. The cloud and the voice half, that is. He threw on his shoes and headed out to work. He was fixing up a neighbor's roof for some weed money. He stopped at the gas station and grabbed an energy drink, then walked to the job. When he arrived, he climbed up onto the roof with 2 packets of shingles on his shoulder for the patch job. Seth climbed the steep pitch and placed the shingles on the ridge. He pulled the drink from his pocket, popped it open, and slammed its contents to wake himself. His last gulp unbalanced himself and pitched him backwards off of the roof. Seth fell into the yard and landed on his head, thereby breaking his neck. A neighbor across the street saw the whole thing and called 911. An ambulance came and loaded up his body, and the paramedics did due diligence on his lifeless body on their way to the emergency room to pronounce him dead. The doctor did so on arrival, and the morgue placed his body in the oversized cooler, for he did not fit in any of the normal storage areas. Seth woke up in his bed with a stiff neck the next day. He swung his feet to the floor and packed his bong and ripped it in full. He exhaled in the messy room filled with smoke. He rubbed his neck and said, "Must have slept on it wrong." He remembered that he had to patch up his neighbor's roof, so he put on his work boots and left the house. Once he got there, he drank his energy drink and noticed that the shingles were already on the ridge of the roof. "Huh, makes my job easier," he said. The homeowner came out and greeted him. "Hi, Seth. Good to see you. I know that you had to leave early yesterday. I hope everything is all right." Seth smiled. "Yeah, all's good," he said while rubbing his sore neck. He climbed the ladder and completed the patch job. It was mid-afternoon when he put the ladder back in the neighbor's garage and cleaned up the mess he had made on the job. He walked home with some money in his pocket, then took a nap. That night, Seth met some friends at the bar, and they drank until closing time. He got into his car, fumbled with the keys to start it, and pulled out of the parking lot with the screech of the tires. He raced down the 4-lane city street, weaving in the double lanes. He was nearly home before he blacked out and hit a telephone pole. He and the car stopped running the way that they were instantly. EMS came, did due diligence, and the morgue placed his body in the cooler as before. Seth woke up in his messy bedroom, wearing the clothes that he had worn the night before. "Man, I don't remember getting in last night. I gotta quit drinking." He rubbed his sore neck and noticed a drop of blood on the pant leg of his jeans. He pulled a bong hit and coughed, as always, but this time his chest rattled and hurt his rib cage. His phone rang. He answered it. "What's up?" His friend asked him to come to the quarry to go swimming with him today. "Yeah, sounds good. Come pick me up." He hung up and changed into his swimming trunks and a Hawaiian shirt. Him and his friend parked down the road from the condemned quarry and hopped the signed fence that read, "Keep out, no trespassing." The two of them hiked the hillside to the top of the quarry. They smoked a joint as they looked down into the green water 70 feet below them. "I bet you won't jump from here," Seth's friend challenged him. "Your balls are square, I won't," Seth retorted. He sprang up, walked to the edge, and acted as if he were an Olympic diver. Turned to his friend, flipped him the bird, stepped forward, and disappeared from sight of his friend, who shouted, "Hell yeah!" while laughing. Seth hit the water feet first and plunged into the depths. The air was forced from his lungs, and the water knocked him unconscious. His hulking corpse floated up to the surface. The fire department rescue squad pulled his body from the quarry with a winch, transported it to the hospital, and the morgue placed it in the cooler. Seth woke up the next day in his bed wearing his swim trunks that were soaking wet. He sat up, rubbed his stiff neck, coughed a bit, then packed his bong. He went to light it and then remembered that he had went swimming yesterday. He scratched his head and thought that he must have pissed his pants while sleeping. The room filled with smoke after exhaling his hit. He looked around the room and said, "I gotta clean this place up." He spent half the day straightening up his room and throwing out the trash that accumulated through the years. He sat on his bed pleased and smoked some more weed. Later, he went out with his buddies to a nightclub in the city. They celebrated someone's birthday with shots. The night was long and the shots were many. As they headed to the car, another drunk guy called and mocked Seth, and the two of them fought. Seth had him pinned against the wall and scorned him with threats. The drunk's gun went off and Seth's life went into blackness. EMS came and delivered him to the hospital, and the morgue placed him in the cooler as before. It was late afternoon before Seth rose from sleep. He laid quietly staring at the ceiling of his clean bedroom. His neck felt sore, his chest rattled with each breath, and his heart hurt. "It feels like I got punched in the heart," he thought to himself. He sat up and rolled a joint. He lit it and thought, "I don't even remember last night." He took a puff and extinguished the joint to save for later. He got up, left the house, and went for some coffee. He sat at the cafe sipping his coffee as he scrolled his phone. He saw a post about a man getting shot last night. Then he felt a sharp pain hit his heart. He clutched his chest with his hand, and the pain vanished. Seth took his last sip and headed out into the world. He walked a few blocks and sat on the steps of an old church for some rest in the shade. He lit his joint and finished it. He studied the brick building and its colorful stained glass windows. Seth wondered what it was like to go into church and what was the draw that brought many to do so. He dismissed it entirely, as this church had been closed for as long as he could remember. "If it's so important, why is this one locked and boarded up?" he asked himself convincingly. The day waned on as he sat and watched the world race by him and his elevated mindset from the weed. He met up with two friends later in the woods at a bonfire. There were others there that he didn't know, and the night was filled with revelry. A big fat spliff was passed to him, and he took a long pull from it. The fentanyl in it raced through his bloodstream. Seth sat there motionless on that rock, watching the blazing bonfire become smaller and smaller as a tunnel of blackness surrounded its light until it became a tiny point of orange. Seth fought with all his strength, but the blackness won, and he slumped into unconsciousness. Then the coldness of death removed him from this world. They found his body left all alone next to the remains of a smoldering bonfire early the next morning. The hospital did the paperwork, and the morgue placed him in the cooler. Seth woke up in his bed with a sore neck and a terrible hangover. He had no idea how he had gotten home from the party in the woods last night. He sat up and grabbed his bong to pack it. Then he put it back on the nightstand, got up, and walked into the kitchen and poured a glass of orange juice. He sipped its sweetness. This brought back a memory of his childhood. He would spend a week at his grandmother's house in the summer, and she always made fresh squeezed orange juice for her Sethie, as she called him. The sugar stepped back his hangover, and he jumped in the shower. The hot water revived him further, and thoughts of his G-Mom flooded his memory. He got out of the shower, dried off, and got dressed. He looked over at his dust-covered mountain bike and urged himself to go for a ride. Soon he was at the park, riding the trails. He felt the adrenaline fill him and push him toward a bigger boost. He rode to the gravity trails to try some jumps. It was a long time ago that he rode like this, and many drugs have kept him from the practice and skill to do so. He still went for it. The first jump sent him over the handlebars, and he flew into a tree. EMS did their due diligence as they took him to the hospital, and the morgue placed him in the cooler. Seth woke up early in his bed. He thought for a moment that he was in a hospital bed because he remembered crashing his bike and a doctor standing over him. He dismissed it, yet he couldn't forget the bike crash. His neck was sore, his chest rattled on exhale, and his back was stiff. He got up, slowly got dressed, and headed to the gas station for an energy drink. He stood in line to pay behind a man that pulled out a pistol and pointed it at the cashier and said, "Give me the money in the till now." Seth smacked the robber in the head with his canned drink, and the man stumbled forward, recovered, turned, and shot Seth dead. EMS came, and well, by now, you know the rest. Seth woke up late in the day on his couch. He thought he remembered watching a movie about a store being robbed before he fell asleep on the couch. "I wonder how the TV got turned off," he said aloud. He laid there contemplating his life and what he has done with it so far. He sat up, placed his head into his hands, and wept for himself. He wondered if this was all there is to life. Entertainment, drunkenness, drug experimentation, chasing women, and showing his strength to those that deserve it. He was interrupted by a knock on the door. He got up, pulled back the curtain on the window to see who was knocking, as his friends always just walked in. A man stood on his doorstep, dressed in a dark blue suit, holding a black book. He was clean-shaven, stood upright in eagerness with a joyful look on his face. He also was holding a black book with gilded pages. Seth let the curtain fall, and it blotted out the sunlight that streamed through the window. The room went dark, and another knock. Seth said quietly, "I ain't buying what you're selling, buddy," then laid back on the couch to pity himself further. Another knock, this time louder, then no more. Seth's questions and sorrow fueled his desire for some whiskey, and he started throwing shots back in a fury. It got ugly as the bottle got empty. He was filled with rage against his own injustice for his life. The empty bottle flew into the air and smashed the television. Seth punched holes in the walls as he wrestled himself for sobriety. He tossed his second-hand furniture around the room as if it were his enemy come to fight him. He cut his hand open, punching his reflection as he passed by the mirror in his bedroom. Seth passed out from the alcohol and fell onto his bed. It was hours later when his friends found him dead in a pool of blood. An anonymous call was made to 911 about Seth's condition, and as you know, EMS, the hospital, and the morgue did their due diligence. Seth opened his eyes and saw an ant crawling on the kitchen floor inches away from his face. The coolness of the tile brought him relief from the burning hangover caused by the whiskey. A ray of sunlight shone a spot that tracked the floor for the hour or so that he laid there motionless. Seth's might was beaten by his own. He was broken in body and spirit. His head pounded, his neck ached, his heart hurt, his breathing was laborious, both of his hands were numb, and he had no strength to move. The ant circled his field of view again, and Seth wondered what it was looking for. Maybe it sought a crumb to be satisfied with. Perhaps it was seeking a whole cookie so it could bring back the colony and they could work together for everyone's benefit. The ant stopped and waited. Its antenna waved in the air. It then turned and walked away from Seth and disappeared under the refrigerator. Seth slept. The sunspot was now on the kitchen's base cabinet when Seth opened his eyes again. The intensity of his ails was lessened, but they remained. He had strength enough to push himself up onto his knees. He looked at his hands, and they were scarred from long cuts that looked as if they had happened years ago. His face fell into his brutal hands, and he wept. Seth cried out for help. He did not know who to call out to, so he called out to God. He didn't believe there was a God. He thought what he always thought about God, and that was doubt. He had no other help. He only had doubt. So he fought that doubt with all the toughness that he is. The tears came along with submission. The tears gave him strength and comfort. The agony of his life began to leave. Confusion became clarity. His sorrow was replaced with love. Love, something that he never knew save for those weeks that he spent with G-Mom every summer as a boy. Seth dragged himself over to the refrigerator, opened it from the floor, and reached up to grab the bottle of orange juice. He opened it and took a sip. Its tart sweetness revived him further. Once again he fell into his own hands and wept bitterly. Tears pooled around him as he cried out a life of regret, abuse, and loneliness. There were no more tears to shed. He let all of his pain pour from his soul. Suffering became a memory, no longer his silent companion. He felt light deep inside of his darkness. A spark of hope shone brightly, chasing the shadows of himself away. Seth slowly got up onto his feet. He took a swig of the OJ and walked into the living room. The furniture was piled in broken heaps. The television was smashed to pieces, and there were tracks of blood across the carpet. He got sick to his stomach and needed fresh air. He went to the front door and opened it. As the door swung open towards him, a black book with gilded pages fell from the threshold and lay at his feet, revealing words printed in gold. Holy Bible. Seth bent down and picked up the book. He ran his hands over its well-worn leather cover. He thumbed it He thumbed it, and the pages flipped, pushing a slight breeze into his face. He saw parts underlined, highlighted, and notes written on the edges of its pages. He thumbed it again and stopped at a dog-eared page. He carefully unfolded the page to reveal words printed in red. His eyes went to a passage, which he read. It said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Seth walked out of his house carrying nothing else but that book. He walked down his street, continuing to read on. "No man cometh unto the Father but by me." Seth walked on reading. "If ye had known me, ye should have known my Father also. Henceforth ye know him and have seen him." Seth ended up walking to his mother's house, where he stayed, reading the Bible given to him for the last 20 days of his life. EMS came and removed Seth's body and brought him to the hospital, where the morgue placed it in the cooler until his burial. Seth woke up standing in a field of wildflowers that went on in every direction for as far as he could see. He marveled at the sight, and he felt connected to everything: the flowers, the blades of grass, the air that filled his lungs, and the light that enveloped him in its brightness. Seth heard a man's voice, the same voice that spoke to him in his dream. The man's voice said, "Welcome home."